My name is Larry Buss. I live and farm in Harrison County, Iowa. Our presentation today is entitled Into the Weeds, Resistance Management in Harrison County. I'm going to be doing the first part, and Mr. Mike Witt, Iowa State University agronomist, will be doing the last part. And really what we're going to be talking about is what we call the wicked problem of pest resistance. And we're going to go on a journey today. A little background, why pest resistance management is needed. We're going to talk about how the Harrison County team was formed. That's the team that I lead, and it's a great team. We've been focused for some time on this. We'll get into that. And we'll talk about the specific Harrison County pest resistance management project and program, what we've been doing, where we're going, and the lessons that we have learned. To start this off, there was a meeting back in January of 2015 at Iowa State University. I was there, as well as other participants, farmers, crop advisors, technology providers. And we were there to look to see and dialogue if we thought that if we have pest resistance. And if we did, if we needed to develop a statewide plan to manage that resistance. And the conclusion was, yes, we did have pest resistance certainly across weeds, but also coming on insects and also on plant disease. And so there was a team that was put together, and they developed a plan to roll out ultimately the program. The program was ultimately rolled out in January 2017 in Des Moines, Iowa, at the Iowa Power Farming Show. I was there. Three launched it. Bill Northey, Secretary of Agriculture at the time in Iowa, Dr. John Lawrence in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Iowa State University, and myself, Harrison County farmer. So what was launched then was this program, and this is the logo. That's the site to get lots and lots of information on it for future use. So the program, basically, we're trying to slow the evolution of pest resistance from the tools that we have to deal with them: chemical, genetic, agronomic. Major tenets of that program are it's voluntary, it's local solutions, and it's localized in this case in Harrison County and to the county level, because that's where the rubber somewhat meets the road. It's an adaptive management thing. We don't know what the correct way to approach this is, so we are learning and we are adapting and changing as we go forward. We're looking to preserve the viability of technologies that we have and maintain farm profitability. We're ultimately looking to change the mindset of we in agriculture, that pest resistance management is something that we have to deal with and dialogue with, just as we do seed decisions, fertilizer decisions, other cropping decisions. And ultimately, we're trying to raise the awareness that pest resistance is here. We need to manage it, we need to deal with it, and we need to get that word spread out, not only at the county level, but across Iowa and across the nation. So the Iowa Pest Resistance Management Program consists of four pilot projects. One is Western corn rootworm in Northeast Iowa. One is soybean aphids the first one was in Northeast Iowa. Western rootworm in Northeast Iowa, the soybean aphids in Northwest Iowa. And then in Central Iowa, it's weeds, primarily water hemp. And we're dealing with multiple modes of action. And here in Southwest Iowa, where I'm at, it is weeds and pathogens, plant disease. So I'm going to talk about the Harrison County project, which I am fortunate enough to be the leader of that. A little bit of my credentials, just a tidbit. I'm involved with the Iowa Corn Growers Association as well as other commodity groups. I'm a Harrison County farmer, been here for years. And so that's somewhat my background. Harrison County, you can see where the arrow is pointing. It's in far western Iowa, southwest, west central. It is a county that has basically two farming regions. One is the Loess Hills, which are highly fragile in terms of water erosion. And then the other region is the Missouri River Valley, which is flat, has variable soils, and is highly productive, but it also has weed issues. Both of them have their weed issues. So I'm going to give you a little perspective now from as I see it in the history of the evolution of pest resistance in the time period that I have lived. As you can see, I'm not a young person, so I was in the 50s and 60s. I was in my parents, so they farmed in western Iowa, not too far from where I'm at now. But I'm just going to dialogue a little bit on the journey to pest resistance across corn and soybeans. In the 50s and 60s, basically everything was tilled. No-till was not a concept then. Herbicide we had was 2,4-D on corn, and we did have atrazine, which was obviously great, as was 2,4-D. Insects, corn borer was basically it. Plant disease, if there was any there, nobody really paid any attention to it. It was what it was. Soybeans, somewhat the same thing, had full tillage, everything was tilled. In the 1950s, I don't recall any herbicides, but I do recall one that came in the 1960s called amaranth. That was the first that I recall. Insects and plant disease, at that time period, I remember there was very, very little insects and plant disease that attacked soybeans, probably because it was a relatively new crop. And the weeds we had to deal with were velvet leaf, sunflower, cucumber, pigweeds, and grasses. That was basically it. Then moving on into the 70s and 80s, again, this is from my own experience and perspective. We started to transition from full tillage into minimum, and in the 80s into no-till, especially in the Loess Hills. We had more herbicide options. We had more insects, more plant disease. Going into soybeans, same thing as for corn. We we had full tillage in the 70s, even in the Loess Hills at that time period in the 1970s and backwards. The moldboard plow was used extensively in the Loess Hills. A lot of erosion, as it was basically a moldboard plow, disc a couple times, harrow, and then plant. A reason for that is because the planting machines, the planters we had at the time could not plant in anything other than a very smooth tabletop-like environment for accurate seed placement, and they could not deal with trash left over from the previous year. We did have a tool called the recirculating sprayer and the weed wiper, where those were tools used to combat, in Harrison County, primarily shattercane, which was a new weed that came in. But those two tools, you went across the top of the soybean canopy where the weeds were at, and you wiped them or sprayed them with Roundup glyphosate, and that killed them. Roundup glyphosate was in those days highly effective. We had more insects, more plant disease, and on the weeds, same as we had, plus shattercane that came in. Then going into the 1990s, much more transition to minimum and no-till, especially in the Loess Hills, that were very fragile for water erosion. We did have a transition into no-till on the Missouri River Valley. It started here, basically for less trips over the field, fuel savings, and so forth. Had more reliance on herbicides, obviously, in a no-till environment. We had more plant disease to deal with. We had more insects to deal with. Soybeans, the same thing as with corn. The first resistance that I noticed in my operation was in the early 1990s with a great herbicide at the time called Pursuit. That's where I first noticed, probably about 1993, 1994 time period resistance, and that was with water hemp. Plant disease and insects were increasing. And as far as the weeds, we had more transition to water hemp. Then into the 2000s, same thing again, moving more and more from minimum till to no till. Really, pretty much nobody was doing full moldboard plow type tillage anymore. More reliance on herbicides, especially glyphosate coming in corn. We had it in soybeans in the 1990s, which was great, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Soybeans, same transition. We first started to notice some resistance, weed resistance to glyphosate. Plant disease insects seem to keep increasing, whether it be in corn, whether it be in soybeans. Weeds, we had more water hemp. With no-till, excuse me, we had mare's tail started becoming an issue. Grass has always been an issue. We had less shatter cane because of the glyphosate. And I'm going to talk now about a concept that I've coined over the years, too broad of application. I'm going to talk about glyphosate. We really need it severely in soybeans to help us combat weeds, but we did not need it in corn. We had corn herbicides that were fully adequate. Corn is more aggressive on crowding out weeds due to its growth and its height, but it was introduced genetically to be used on corn as well as soybeans. And because of its low cost, everybody used it, including me, on both corn and soybeans. And so we had resistance to that, in my opinion, was accelerated greatly. So that's my concept of too broad of application. We have to be concerned about that so that we don't repeat that again. We need the tools developed for where we need it, not broadcast across everything, because we've got to, as I said earlier, we've got to keep pest resistance management, weed resistance in mind. Farming today, 2021. We're looking to minimize soil erosion. We're looking for good water quality. We're looking for good soil health, good crop yields, and we're looking for profitability. So weed resistance is a key here. If we don't beat weed resistance, we're going to have to go back to more tillage. I'm seeing that already on the Missouri River Valley to combat weed resistance and cut and reduce costs of herbicides in the less hills. We don't want to go back to tillage because that would negate all the positive things in terms of soil erosion, minimizing water quality, soil health that we've got with no-till. No-till in the less hills is tremendous. But weed resistance management is the key to the practice that we'll have to have in the future. Now the Harrison County Team Project formation. A little bit about that here. Palmer amaranth was first discovered in Iowa, in Harrison County, in the area that I operate in, not on one of my fields, but it was near it. First discovered in 2013. And I, knowing what I knew about it at the time from reading literature and articles from the South and the Southeast part of the United States, it was really a scourge on production. And so I tried to raise farmers' attitudes and awareness that we had Palmer and that we had to deal with it. And I naively thought that we could eradicate it at the time. And so that was in 2013. Then in 2015, in my area, some Palmer amaranth was allowed to go to seed where it could have been eradicated or removed there with tillage or with spraying or mowing, but it was allowed to go to seed. So that led me to try to get it into the noxious weed law in Iowa. At the time, when I tried that in early 2016, the response I had, well, it's not a widespread enough problem. Oh, we don't want to open up the noxious weed law just for that. Well, that was a mistake because in 2016, later on with the enormous amount of conservation reserve program plantings that year, Palmer amaranth was found to be in the CRP seed that was planted. And so by that unfortunate occurrence, Palmer amaranth was spread rapidly all across Iowa. So then in 2017, Palmer amaranth was finally added to the Iowa noxious weed law. But unfortunately, at that time, as the old saying is, the horse was out of the barn and away it went. And so eradicating it was probably, in my opinion, was no longer possible. And then the other thing that happened in 2017 is the Iowa Pest Resistance Management Program was launched, as I said earlier, in January of 2017. Now going to the Harrison County team, which is one of those 4 pilot projects that I just talked about. The team was formed. I formed it in March of 2017, and the drivers for that was we needed to see what we needed to address the weed pressure, the likelihood of reduced yield, reduced profitability. We needed to look at the tools we had. With the ideas was said earlier that we need to be concerned about pest resistance management across Iowa to preserve the tools that we have to deal with that, and so we can increase, or so we can maintain our profitability into the future. So the team that we have formed, I won't read all the names, but I will discuss or briefly mention the disciplines. We have representative commodity groups like myself, we have Farm Bureau, we have Iowa ISU Extension, we have local agronomists, we have chemical herbicide representatives, we have bankers, we have Iowa State University, we have sociologists, we have experts at that level, we have again agronomists. So we have a collective team here that we have formed in Harrison County, and this team has been superb because it has maintained its presence and continued to work together. This being 2021, as I said a bit ago, we started this team in 2017, and everybody is still there. And the reason for that is because we all know that pest resistance is an issue. We've got to manage it to maintain ultimately profitability, because if we don't, our costs are increased. If we don't pay attention to pest resistance and management, our yields will reduce, our costs will go up, or both. And the weeds in Harrison County that we focus on, the reason that Harrison County was picked as a pilot project was for Palmer amaranth, but I knew that Palmer amaranth, not everybody has Palmer amaranth even today, but everybody has water hemp, everybody probably has mare's tail, a lot of people have giant ragweed, so we're looking at those 4 weeds. And then we also, because of no other pilot team across in Iowa on the overall statewide program is looking at plant disease, we're looking at plant disease also. Our aim is to involve the entire community. This just isn't a farmer landowner problem. To solve it, we've got to have the entire community. That's why that diverse team was organized, agronomists, lenders, experts, and we really go on up all the way. We have dialogue with the EPA at the top because that's where that concept I talked about, too broad of application, that's where the new products are registered for their use. And so it's really an entire spectrum of the entire agriculture community that needs to deal with and focus on pest resistance management.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Witt. I'm the field agronomist for Iowa State University out here in West Central Iowa. And I'm going to continue with the rest of this presentation that Larry started. And what I'm really going to talk about is I'm going to talk about the projects and activities and some of the outreach that we've done through this project with Protect Iowa Crops. So with Harrison County, the things that we have done, we started off in 2018, like Larry gave you a great history of everything that occurred. So we started off, we did a farmer survey to figure out the concerns, because as Larry stated when he started, originally it was based on Palmer amaranth. And we wanted to look at and see if that was really a large concern for the community or if there was some changes. After we did some of those farmer surveys, we did the initial survey and we did surveys of people who came to our meetings so we could see really what they were looking at and what they were concerned about. The second thing we did was we did some weed seed screening. With that, we did some collections of different populations across the county, and we'll talk about that. They were screened at Iowa State University. And what we did was looked at different herbicide groups to see what the resistance profile was right here in the county. Then we have a couple videos that will kind of be a montage of sorts about our field trials and field days that we looked at over the last couple of years. And then we'll finish up with the outreach and how this program is really growing through not only here in Harrison County, but growing across the state and other activities and things like that that are starting to spring up. So like I said, we'll kind of go over the survey results. So initially we sent out 225 of those postcard surveys to Harrison County farmers. What we did was we got different lists from entities here within the county to make sure that we really just talked to farmers who are here in Harrison County, because that's where we wanted to focus this project. We had the response rates, as you can see, but the top two weeds of issue were water hemp and mare's tail. And like Larry pointed out before, originally this was based on Palmer amaranth, but that was not the weed that we found was really the one of greatest concern here in Harrison County. So we did a switch. And with that, we decided that water hemp, mare's tail were going to be the main focuses and the main drivers that we were looking at. We also did a survey, the initial survey, then we used that to lead us as a community organization to lead us down the road that the community wanted us to go, excuse me. So after that, we had a survey in 2019 in one of our field days, and the next results that we have are for that survey. So we had a field day, like I said, 2019. Of all the attendees, one of the big questions we asked was, why did you come today? And as you can see, some of the results, most of it were farmers were interested in better weed control, or they were from ag business. There's always a few that want to come to these presentations just for lunch. But at the end of the day, farmers really were concerned about better weed control, and they weren't really looking at better weed control as a statewide situation. They were really focused on, this is Harrison County, this is my home. What are some of the issues that are occurring right here for me? The biggest weed control challenge also for people in Harrison County, as you can see, resistant weeds came across as being one of the things that people, when we did this survey, they thought, you know what, this is really the issue. It's not necessarily the cost. We all understand timely applications. We can only control Mother Nature so much. But with those timely applications, that was not the main driver. Resistance was really what was going on there in everyone's mind. When we did the survey results of what is your most difficult weed to control, the results were, in comparison to our initial survey, most of the farmers said water hemp and mare's tail were their biggest weeds of concern. Giant ragweed was also listed, and Palmer amaranth, but it was very clear that we were on the right direction, that we wanted the community to follow because we were looking more at water hemp and mare's tail. And then the big question we asked was, what was your current soybean weed control program? We wanted to ask this question to know, what were farmers doing currently in the area locally to control these weeds? Were you doing a single application, a two-pass, even a three-pass system? And we were kind of, a little surprised to learn that almost 20 to 25% of people were doing a three-pass application to control their soybean weeds. So the days of a one-pass Roundup system are far in the past. But again, we were looking at 2 to 3 applications is what farmers were looking at and what they were used to. We'll shift gears a little bit now, and herbicide resistance water hemp in Iowa. What these slides are, and I will walk you through these are from Dr. Prashant Jha, ISU Weed Science. This is his group that did the weed screening results for us. So what we ended up doing was we took samples. We ended up taking 36 samples from different places throughout Harrison County. Myself and other members of the team traversed the county. We grabbed samples of weeds that some were deemed to possibly have resistance, and others were just random samples out there in the field of weed populations that were growing in soybean fields in 2019. And what we were really looking at is we were looking at what is the resistance profile across the county. And as you can see, percent of populations, herbicide group 2, herbicide group 5, we were almost 100% resistance that was confirmed at a 4x application rate within these populations and across the county. We also, herbicide group 9, which that would be your glyphosate, at a 4x rate, we were almost at 90%, above 90% of those as well at a 4x rate had confirmed resistance. Now, if you look at some of the others, the group 14s and 27s, we were at a smaller percentage, but that's still something to be concerned about. And then if we look at your 2,4-D and your dicamba, those were your E3 and your extend situations in there. Those are not confirmed resistance. I want to point that out. Those are listed as survivors. At a 1x rate was the application of the herbicide that was used on there. Those percentages, about 10% of those plants and 10% of those populations had individuals that survived to produce seed in there. We are doing more studies on those to look at those and see what is going on with those individual populations. We're going to do more screening at a 4x rate and I believe an 8x rate to determine if these are actually resistant populations and what that dynamic looks like. But that is something that we are going to be continuing to do. If you look at the chart on the right that has the stacked multiple resistances, again, we have a fairly large percentage of 2- and 3-way resistances in the county, as well as some 4-way resistances, and you can see the herbicide groups that are shown there. Distribution of these resistances across the county. Like I said, me and other members of the team drove across the county, and we were able to pick up these samples, and we wanted to look at, was there a particular area in the county that might have shall we say, a more difficult time controlling the weeds or have more resistance issues? And what we determined was, with our sample populations in 2019, there was no correlation in one quadrant of the county versus the other. All 4 had 3-way and 4-way resistances. You can see the quadrant on the lower left. We did have more locations down there that had 3-way resistance. However, we also sampled more locations in there, so that's kind of just how that ended up working. In 2020, this last year, we did sample more sites, and this map will be enhanced and more will come into that as we look at that going forward. But this is one area that we really wanted to determine for farmers, because people always ask, we see weed screening results. We see all of these different issues about resistance, and we think of it as a large scale or a big picture item. However, this map, and one of the things we wanted to really drive home to individuals in Harrison County, is that this is local. This is you. This is in your backyard, in your home. So it's not just something that you see in literature or see on the newspaper. It's in your backyard. So these are things that as a community, we need to work on to control these, and not just things that somebody else will take care of further down the road. They're things that are real life right down the road from you. So with all of these different things that occur, we like to have field trials, and we like to do outreach, and we like to talk to people and show people hands-on what is happening within their community. Because again, we can watch videos like you're watching now on Crops TV, but when we get back to a non-COVID-19 world, everyone likes to go out in the field. Everyone likes to see things in their backyard that's actually happening. So what I have now is I have a video, and this video will be of different field days and different things we've had over the years. You'll see different members of the team, and it'll really talk about some of the highlights that we've seen over the last couple of years with this Harrison County project.
Well, my name is Larry Buss. I'm a farmer here in the area. Ever since Palmer amaranth was discovered in Harrison County back in 2013, I've taken an interest in weed resistance and pest management and so forth, and so I was able to attend the initial meeting back in January of 2015 when we had a statewide meeting to see if this was an issue. But this one here is focused on weeds, water hemp, mare's tail, giant ragweed, and of course Palmer amaranth. To me, it's a real honor. Myself and the team that composes the Harrison County Pilot Project, we are dedicated, we're passionate, we're concerned about the issue of pest resistance. We really, really are. And for the Weed Science Society of America and the Entomological Society of America to come here to not look at what we've done, but to look at us as a team, how we have come together, how we have stayed together, how we have focused on the project, how we have dealt with the problem, where we're going, where we've been, where we're going. It's a real honor. It really is.
I think it's really cool that the whole country is coming to Iowa to talk to farmers and producers and ag advisors in Harrison County. They're giving advice and insights and questions to the whole country to listen to, and then take what they've learned, adapt it, and apply it to this problem that's across the country. So we have people from the Northwest, we have people from the South, all listening to our growers and our crop advisors here in Iowa on how they're trying to solve this problem.
This Harrison County pilot project, which is part of the Iowa Pest Resistance Management Program, has been extremely successful for basically 3 reasons. One of them is the outreach that we have received by various entities across the state of Iowa. Like I said earlier, outreach is big, and that's one of the things we want to do because we want to get the word out how important it is to deal with these pests, and that pest resistance is here and we've got to deal with it. The second thing is because of folks like you who are looking at this video, who have come to our field trials, who have come to our sessions where we've been talking about this, because we can do all this stuff in the field, but unless we get it out to people, growers, people like you that'll take it home and truly incorporate pest resistance management into your farming decisions, just like you would fertilizer and seed, that's what makes this important. And third, the team in Harrison County has been superb. This team has been together for probably, well, over 3 years now, and nobody says, oh, I've had enough of that, I'm not going to do it. We all are enthusiastic, we all volunteer for this work, and the reason we do it is because we know it's extremely important, and we know that if we don't do it, if we don't get ahead of pests as far as resistance, whether they be weeds, insects, or disease, we're going to have reduced yields, we're going to have increased costs, or both, and it's going to be a major impact to the profitability of our agriculture.
That video there, I hope you enjoyed it. As you could tell, that was pre-COVID-19. So we got to go out in the field and we got to look at a bunch of different things. So outreach, as Larry pointed out in that video, is big. It's very huge for us. We've done different things, as you can see on the slide right now, media articles, handouts, speaking events. All of these things can be found at our website, protectiowacrops.org. You can go there, you can see a lot of the different things that we've talked about in Harrison County. And one of the things that's really been very interesting to see in this outreach portion is that it's not just Harrison County. We know that. We know herbicide resistance isn't just a Harrison County issue. However, this group out here, as Larry pointed out, is very unique in that we want to help the community. We want people to see what's going on. What this has done is this has inspired other groups to take hold of this charge that we're looking at and do things within their own community. With that, the Story County Farm Resistance Network has also formed, and they are another group that, kind of like Harrison County, is looking at different ways and different things to do that presentation and to look at what is going on in our individual county and how do we do that. So with that, we look at our future. What do? We have cover crops. Those are some of the things we're going to talk about in the next year. We've got cover crop demonstrations set up if we're able to have people come out in the field. If not, we will have more video presentations on that, more demonstrations of herbicides. Those are other things that we're looking at going forward. Economic analysis. That is a different project that we're doing. We have a grant in which we're working with individuals at Iowa State and the University of Northern Iowa to really look at how does weed resistance affect the bottom line and what are different scenarios that you can go through and you can look at to determine if I have poor weed control, what will that cost me? Not necessarily today, but what could that cost me in the future? So that is upcoming. That is a very robust economic analysis. Fungicide screening. A lot of people are looking at fungicides across the US, across Iowa, and determining, is it financially beneficial to use fungicides, number one? And number two, do you just apply fungicides and not pay attention? That is not a good resistance or IPM management practice, but it is some things that people are doing. So we are going to be looking at fungicides in Harrison County and see what's happening in that and talk to people about proper usage of fungicides and not just applying them across the whole landscape. And like I talked about with new projects, we have the Story County Farm Resistance Network that was forming. This network also has produced a video kind of as an introduction to you about some of the things that they are looking at. And we'll watch that video now so you can see how Harrison County has inspired others to take up this charge of resistance management.
My name's Tim Kauser. I'm a farmer north of Nevada, and I'm a part of the Story County Farm Resistance Network.
Is weed resistance really that important?
Weed resistance is huge. Back when Dr. Mike Owen was at Iowa State University, he really drilled in the importance of how much we rely on our chemicals. So we as farmers feel like we need to continue that, and we need to push that message. So going forward, we need to keep educated on how important these chemistries are, what we can do to use them and lengthen out the longevity of them before our weeds become resistant to them. Boy, not many farmers are thinking about chemical and weed resistance in the middle of January. We are. We as farmers, we feel it's important to gather as a group and demonstrate the importance of weed resistance management going forward to make sure that these chemistries are useful. Question, is weed resistance management really important?
Yes.
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 Yes!
My name is Jim Penny. I'm an agronomist farmer from Story County, and I am part of the Story County Weed Resistance Network. This group is very important because a lot of the public does not know that in order to practice soil conservation long-term, we need herbicides. We need to diagnose our weed problem and utilize all the different chemistries in order to control our weeds on our farm.
We feel we need a voice as a farmer group, outside of industry and outside of ISU Extension, but also to partner with those people and to bring awareness to the issue. This is a new network, this is a new group of farmers, and we would like to include anyone that wants to be a part of it. And largely we're basing this off the Harrison County project, which is very similar. It's farmer-led, and we feel that more benefit can come from it if we as farmers lead the charge.
This program is the future of farming and the future of conservation.
Stay tuned for updates from our group.
As you can see, the Story County group is off and running with their journey, like we have been talking about today with the Harrison County journey that Larry started, and I'm finishing up for you today. So again, how do we measure the success of what we've done? Number one, it's about raising the awareness that resistance is an issue and that people need to realize it's not just somebody else's problem, it's their own problem and the problem within their own community. We also, again, need to change the mindset on pest resistance, that it's not a scary thing. We can accept the fact that we have resistance issues and that there have been some choices we've made in the past that haven't always been the most beneficial for management of resistance, and we chose profitability over that. That is okay. However, now we have to reap what we sowed back then and deal with some of these problems that we're having. And the last one is be a place farmers can get ideas and see possibilities. Really, the outreach of this group and the outreach in Harrison, Story County, and all the other pilots that were discussed is so that farmers have a place to go to figure out how to solve these issues and what to do with that within their own communities and not rely on just somebody to tell them what they need to do and tell them how they need to fix the problem. They can look within themselves and with their own communities and determine how is that taken care of. So to end, I would like to say thank you. All of these groups here are a major part in the Iowa Pest Resistant Management Program and the Harrison team. And we would like to say a large thank you to all of them. And I would like to say thank you to all of you who have taken this time to watch our Crops TV video.